Hello, this is Nick, the Dark Yogi, and welcome to Kisma and the Dark Yogi, brought to you by SourceMovement.com. We're here for people who want to be radically authentic and courageously vulnerable. So whether you're a yoga teacher, an entrepreneur, or a leader building a tribe, we're here to get your energy and your mindset positioned for success. No more stress, no more lack of energy. It's time to lead with your full potential. Our intention is to leave the world a better place than we found it and inspire you to do the same. So hey, if this message in our podcast resonates with you and you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to Kisma and the Dark Yogi on iTunes. While you're there, give us a rating, let us know what you think, and if you have somebody in your life that would enjoy this conversation, please go ahead and share it with them as well. If you want more information about the movement, all you have to do is go to SourceMovement.com. But for now, let's get the show started. I hope you enjoy this episode of Kisma and the Dark Yogi.
Hey, yeah, welcome. So happy to be here. And many thanks to all our listeners there on the other line. Today we're going to talk about, well, I believe Nick the Dark Yogi is going to talk about something that's been popping up a lot, which is spiritual escapism. And you might refer to it as spiritual attachment, but spiritual escapism is really, to me, it's that, hey, I'm going to go sit in the woods and meditate and forget about my role in the world. It's this ability to really disempower ourselves in the world and run from things. So I'm just going to go ahead and just ask Nick right off the bat, Mr. Dark Yogi, if you were to describe spiritual escapism in 5 words or less, what would it be?
Lack of responsibility. That would be my that would be my 5-word answer for it. I mean, certainly there's a lot more than that, but yeah, total lack of responsibility for your actions and for your and a total lack of respect actually for your place in the world and the gifts that you have to share.
Is that because we're here on this particular planet with a mission, with a sole purpose?
It's because of that, and it's also because, you know, we really do have a responsibility to one another and to the world to not only to share our gifts, which is, you know, certainly part of the soul's mission and soul's purpose, but really to express ourselves in this world, to manifest things into this world, not only for ourselves, but for, you know, for everybody's, the higher good of all. You know, that's the true collaboration of the community.
Right. Would you then say our number one responsibility is to whom?
Well, which part of you? It's really to yourself, right?
Exactly.
But really to your highest and your best. Now, and this is it. Like, this is the place I think where it gets really sticky really fast for people is, well, if it's really just about seeking the highest in myself, you know, shouldn't I just go into a cave and find that? Well, I mean, some people maybe, like, there's a very few people that would be suited for that. But that's not usually the people who are doing that. Like, really, that it's about seeking your highest and your best so that you can express it in the world. Bring it into the world, right?
Got it.
Into the experience for one and all. You know?
Right, because when we bring our highest and best into the world, what happens? There's this ripple effect. And the people around us begin to take notice, like, wow, what's going on? What are you doing? And they want some of that. Well,
you become an agent for change, then an agent for growth and expansion for everybody that you encounter.
Awesome.
Right. And that is, you know, that's a service in itself, you know, and it's really, we've talked many times about how the highest service is to seek the highest in yourself. Well, why? Because then you become the beacon of light, right? Well, if you're a beacon of light shining in a cave, that's awesome for the cave. But what about all the other people, right? What about the rest of the world? And it's not about saving the world, right? It's just something to do so that we can continue to seek the highest in ourselves.
And so let me ask you this, because sometimes the world is so freaking fast, delusional. It's like we're on this roller coaster of drama, attacks, all this stuff. So it seems like the easy way out to escape and go inward and have a beautiful meditation or think positive thoughts and affirmations. So what's wrong with that?
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Really. Mm-hmm. It's where it's all leading, right? It is a crazy world, and no doubt about it. Like that's why we have yoga classes, right? That's your little peaceful place a lot of times where you can go and get your feet back on the ground. And it is really important to have time and space and have a practice where you can retreat, so to speak, right? It's not like surrendering the battle. It's just retreating so that you can regroup. Right, get reconnected, find that highest place in yourself, find that grounded place, and get back out there and do what you're here to do, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong, what becomes, quote unquote wrong, if we're going to go with that, and ultimately what I would say about that is just not productive. Like I'd replace wrong with just not as productive. So what is not as productive about that is in the escapism is making that an end in itself, right? So peace becomes the end pursuit. And that ain't really it. Like, peace is a byproduct of a spiritual practice. If you're seeking peace, ultimately what you're seeking is a lack of agitation. And that's not in the world, right? That agitation doesn't come from the world. Agitation comes from within.
And that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, because we look around and be like, well, what do you mean it comes from in? Betty Sue over there is like screaming at the street corner and calling me names because whatever. So it's sometimes really difficult to see that. And we think if other people could just change, we'd finally have peace and we'd finally have less anxiety.
Yeah, or if in the bigger scheme, if the world would change, if there'd stop being wars, if there'd stop being racism, if there'd stop being sexism or people, bashing gays or like whatever it is, it's like that stuff. Yeah, is that a indication that there's something off? Absolutely. Like, I'm not saying any of that is right, but what I'm saying is when you let that disturb you, that is now your problem. 100%, because you've taken ownership of it and said, I'm going to let this bother me, so it's my problem now. You're agitated.
Got it. So here's something that's coming up for me of interest. I see, when I look at the spiritual escapism, leaving the world, wanting someone else to give me the answers, I realize that it's a neglect of the definition and use of my intellect. Because as we've learned many times from Swami Parthasarathi, when we're in a difficult situation, it's actually this amazing exercise for our intellect. And we can develop an intellect or the ability to reason and discern and assess by being in the situation and truly objective to it. My question, though, is when these crazy things are going on in the world, like gay bashing or, sexism, whatever it is, drugs, drug abuse, riots, and we're passionate about that, how do we stand up for what we believe without letting it destroy us? Because people have to have a voice, and it's great when we've got activists and people taking a stance against evil in the world.
Yeah, but still, you're going to be way less effective if you're agitated by it.
Right, so you're just putting more fire on the fuel on the fire.
And then it's resistance on resistance and nothing happens, right? Because then it's like, it's just violence begets more violence, so to speak, right? And it could be a violent thought towards those people, those quote-unquote wrongdoers, right? We're going to pause for a second.
Comes the train. Comes the train. You guys can tell, like, our little recording studio's right by the Carl's Bad track. Here it comes.
There it is.
All these people going down to San Diego or up to LA.
Now the upside of this is that's the coaster, which means that we can walk to the beach.
Yeah,
so cool. That's pretty cool. So getting back to that anyway.
Yeah, how does one play a role in the world that is effective in allowing, we've heard this phrase, the dark always serves the light. There's always going to be dark, there's always going to be light. the world will never be a place of complete light until we are all self-realized souls, if we want to just go to the absolute. But for here and now, in today's crazy roller coaster of a world, how does one take the spirituality that they have, their intellect, and be effective?
Well, that's the practice of karma yoga, right? It's the detachment from the outcome. It always comes back to that. And like karma yoga is the living practice, and that's what keeps us in the world. So if you're going to be active in the world, one, you have to know your limits and you have to know your boundaries. So you need to know when it's time to retreat and take that. I need freaking time out, man. You know, and I have to like say that, you know, every once in a while to myself of like, dude, you just need time out, you know, go take a walk. And I think a lot of us just need to be like, wow, like I just need a second, right? And the more that we make a solid practice of taking care of ourselves, the less that we need, you know, that we'll come into places where we just need that. Like I need it, you know, like I need to take a time out and just retreat because I'm totally getting my ass kicked here, right? But at the same time, to stay in it, you have to remain objective to the outcome and detach from the results. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't take it. If you really believe in something, like we know people who are, you know, working with people, horrible instances of abuse, you know, in homes and things like that. Like they're on the front lines, man. That's intense. Like that's really intense. And it may be a little bit different in degree, but, you know, for you moms out there, you know, raising kids and like that's intense too in its own way. You know, it's different. It doesn't diminish that at all. It's just to say that with all of this going on, when you become attached to the outcome, well, you're going whichever way that outcome is going. So if some outside circumstance comes in and knocks you off, you know, then we're agitated, then we're spinning. And then if all we have is to go away and look for our, you know, happy place in some cave, it's not really going to help at the end of the day, right? The spiritual practice has to serve the higher.
Right. We heard someone speak the other day about the inner stance of empowerment. And so I guess I would like to tie it into that because that's such a valuable thing to have and to understand. If we're really in a spiritual practice, and I don't like if church is your spiritual practice, awesome, but I'm talking about the internal practice of being the most aligned being possible. If we're really in that, then we'll have this inner stance of empowerment that just by holding a certain state of energy, people will notice. Right. And it's like our friend said, you know, Bruce Lee could stand and have so much internal power. He could press a finger and fly someone across the room because his alignment was so divine and so powerful. Now, I'm not saying violence is the way to go, but that was how much power he had just from being present to the present moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we're going to talk about empowerment, right, then here's where the absolute and the relative actually does come into play. And this is another one of those places that gets real sticky for people. Like your place of power is always in the present moment in this world, right? In this plane, like the 3D plane. We're here on Earth. Like it's an expression and an experience through all of our senses, right? All 6 senses come into play with that. And your ability to create is here and now in the present, right? In time and space, right here and right now, right? Now, where this gets confusing, especially when we look at the yoga teachings, right, which are saying that, you know, reality, quote unquote, big R reality is everything in the world that we're in is the illusion, the Maya, right? So then this is the piece, right? This is the one where so many people lose their way with it because they're like, oh, it's just an illusion.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
An illusion.
Yeah,
right.
I'm happy. I'm just doing it. Like I'm being guided and everything's fine. And, you know, the universe provides, right? Right?
Which it does.
Well, yeah, but it's constantly doing that. And you could actually argue that to say that, you know, certainly in the absolute way, you know, you're constantly provided for with your, you know, your breath and everything like that. But at the end of the day, like the universe provides. When you provide,
the law of the universe.
When you take action to create what you want to create in your life. Right. That's you providing.
It's a little bit of that, the reciprocal effect. We have to give back to the world in order for the world to, or the universe to serve us.
Well, if you want results in this world, you have to take actions in this world. So those, whatever you're dreaming up in your head is amazing and awesome and beautiful. And it really does start there because the imagination is so incredibly powerful, but it has to be expressed in the world. There has to be an action taken in the world to bring it into the 3D. Right. So if, when the teachings are distorted in the way to say, oh, well, it's just an illusion, or it's all not real and I'm just trying to see beyond the illusion of the world. Like, that's cool, but really you're here in the world. And if you step out of the reality that you're in this world and there are physical laws that govern this world, you're totally going to get your ass kicked.
It makes me think of, again, like the person, the spiritual escapist hiding in a cave or just sitting on the beach and meditating and doing whatever. Not that we should not all have those moments where we can do those beautiful things. But again, I keep coming back to the realization that when we're not in the world, we're not exercising our intellect. Therefore, at some point when we step back into the world, like you said, our ass will get kicked because those people are usually the first ones that crumble, that can't manage someone else's anger or anxiety and don't have the tools to be objective and be the witness and have that internal power.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because I don't mean to come off as callous towards that, because there are a lot of people, especially people who look to yoga, and certainly other spiritual practices as well, who are so sensitive. Like, they're just so sensitive to the chaotic world.
Very empathic.
And it's like, yeah, of course you're, especially people like that will be looking for some place of just peace, like where it's like sensory overload constantly, especially when you're tuned in to the sixth sense. It can be so much and so sensitive. It's like, yeah, of course. And then it's like you get a taste of that kind of peace. And all of a sudden it's, hell yeah, that's the best thing ever, right? That's like the warm bath after the long journey. You're like, oh my God, this feels better than anything. And then that becomes an addiction in itself, and thus begins the spiritual escapism, where that sense of peace, that state of peace, becomes the end goal. And ultimately that's not really, it's part of it, but that's not the whole thing. The whole thing is you being powerful in your stance in the present moment to be the creator that you were born to be, and to fully express the human experience.
I'm having a flashback to a course we took at One World University where we did this really crazy breathing, rebirthing process. And it left most people feeling very high. And what was really beautiful, though, at the end is the teacher said to us, look, you can get high by doing this. You can get high by doing drugs. You can get high by drinking. What you really want to do is make the choices to not suffer. And that will be a choice, really looking at your thought flow. But so when we throw around the term spiritual escapism, whether it's running off to be in a cave or whatever, someone could run off and have a martini. Whoa, hello, train.
Crept up on us there.
But do you remember that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I just thought that the teaching was right on, like you can get stoned in any number of ways. Like my morning, reflection feels awesome. And when I stand up from it, like I'm like, I'm good to go, and it's really just, the practice, the real karma yoga and the practice of it is maintaining that throughout the day, like putting it into the day so that everything in my life becomes infused with that level of awareness and that level of intention, right? All for the highest good of all, and for to seek the highest in myself. Everything can become infused by that, but that's the practice. And ultimately, really all that is karma yoga.
Right. So do you have any advice for the person that treasures their quiet, treasures their meditation, and is looking to step into the world in a more powerful way, yet also objective way.
Well, I do want to be really clear in saying that there's nothing wrong with those things, right? And 100%, like those. By the way, those are things that I do every day,
right?
But it's the use of those things and how we relate to them that's really at issue. So, if you find yourself just so needing to escape from the world, number one is just ask the question, like, what's really going on that I just can't handle this? And I can pretty much guarantee that if the answer goes anywhere except back to you, then you're probably off base in your inquiry. And yeah, you can use those external things to trace it back, but all those paths lead back home to say, well, what's going on in me? What's not resolved in me that I'm having this agitation and really that I've let it build up so much that I just have to run away for a bit. And that's the big indicator for me. And not feeling bad about it too. Right. Like if you really are at that place and you're just being like ruthlessly honest with yourself and you're like, dude, I can't handle it. No shame in that. No problem. You just want to make sure that you're not continuing to repeat that pattern. So that process of inquiry is key. Like, what's going on that I just can't deal?
And not to judge, right? It's not about judging ourselves, but just to have that honest.
Well, yeah. I mean, the judgment's just not helpful.
Right.
You know, it just makes it way harder than it needs to be. I was on the phone. I was on with a mentor of mine a couple days ago, actually, and I was just sharing, really just how I was feeling about a few things and kind of judging myself. I was feeling like, oh, like I should be this or I should be able to do that. And she's like, is that helpful? And I just had a little laugh at myself and was like, no, not really. So let's not deal with that. Good. It's done. Yeah. As always, just thanks for bringing all of you and all of who you are to these conversations. Really just so honored. Yes. Really just so honored. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Love you guys. Very big and heartfelt. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Kisma and the Dark Yogi. We hope that you enjoyed it. If you've got somebody in your life that you think would really like this show, go ahead and share it with them. You can find us on iTunes. You can find us on Stitcher and SoundCloud as well. Look for Kisma and the Dark Yogi. We'd love to hear from you, so please give us a rating and a review. That would really help us in getting the message out there, and we'd greatly appreciate it. If you have questions or would like to hear us talk about something on the show, please drop us a line at podcast@sourcemovement.com. That's podcast@sourcemovement.com. Until the next time, namaste.